very important unit of the Cert 2 in music is to do with work health and safety. You need to know all about health and safety in the recording studio to increase your awareness around fire hazards and alarms, the problems with an untidy work environment, communicating hazards with your trainer, sound pressure and exposure to loud noises, ventilation issues, use of computers, lifting equipment, electrical shocks and other obstacles. It's most important that you communicate any hazards or faults to your trainer as soon as possible. When carrying out any kind of project that includes electrical equipment, small spaces, tripping hazards, or using computers for extended periods of time, it is important to be aware of the possible health and safety implications. It's important to evaluate these potential hazards should any of them come to light when using the recording studio, and to inform your trainer before the practical side of the project commences. There are signs around the studio which communicate potential hazards. Look out for these. Here are some of the health and safety issues that should be recognised and evaluated prior to entering the studio. Cables are obviously a massive tripping hazard in a recording studio, due to the fact that microphones will be plugged into the walls via XLR cables throughout the day and could be moved and swapped around constantly. This could create a tripping hazard, so you have to be vigilant while walking around the live rooms when instruments and microphones are in use to avoid personal injury and equipment damage. Sound pressure. Drums and amplifiers in small spaces can, and usually do, reach high air pressure levels that can lead to hearing damage. It is important that this is considered in the studio, as musicians and producers require the use of their ears for their trade. This health and safety issue can be combated by wearing noise-cancelling headphones or alternatively earplugs to reduce the pressure entering the ears. Another option is to sit the musician in a separate room to where the noise source is when recording amplified instruments. The same goes for listening to loud music for extended periods, as this has the ability to reduce the range of your hearing over time if regular breaks are not taken. When you're listening to sound using headphones, keep the sound at a reasonable level. If you take the headphones off and you can still hear the sound level, they are probably too loud. Some early warning signs of hearing loss include ringing in the ears after doing something which exposes you to noise, having trouble understanding what people say, needing to turn up the volume on the radio or television even though other people can hear, or not being able to hear background noises like a telephone or a doorbell. Fire hazards. Due to the vast amount of electrical equipment being used in the recording studio, there is a small possibility of electrical fires if a particular piece of equipment were to overheat. The studio walls are covered in foam soundproofing, and they have poor ventilation due to the noise that vents can make. Both of these can be an additional fire hazard should one arise. It is important that if a small fire is discovered, you do whatever you can to notify your trainer. Then steps can be made to tackle the fire with one of the studio's wall-mounted extinguishers. Alternatively, if the fire is too large, you must evacuate the studio and the building immediately and call 000 for the fire service. Fire alarms. Because the studio is a place that is usually quite noisy, it may not be possible to hear an alarm over the sound coming from the speakers. Added to this, people are often wearing headphones and can't hear what other sounds are happening around them. Because of this, powerful flashing lights have been installed to alert people to the fact that there may be a problem. Using computers. If you're using a computer for an extended period of time, it is important that you take regular breaks to avoid damaging your eyes or even your back if your sitting posture is poor. Always sit up straight with the computer monitor at eye level to avoid straining any muscles. Food and drinks. Food and drink in the studio is not allowed. This has to do with the fact that most of the equipment is sensitive to spillage and crumbs. The circuitry in the computers, recording equipment and instruments will corrode very quickly, particularly if exposed to sugary drinks like soft drinks. Any liquid, grease or crumbs from food has the potential to seriously decrease the lifespan of the gear. Besides all this, it is a space for creativity and learning, not eating and drinking, so leave the chow outside the studio. Lifting and twisting. Ask your supervisor for instructions and training before moving or lifting heavy objects. It is always better to reduce the risk. You could lighten loads, break the loads into smaller quantities, reduce bending, twisting, reaching movements, use team lifting, or use mechanical assistance like a trolley. The mic booth. The mic booth is insulated so that external sounds can't be heard on the recordings. The amount of air is limited to about 5 to 10 minutes of fresh oxygen. Regular breaks are needed to avoid suffocation and drowsiness. Follow the instructions on the wall, which encourage regular breaks. Electricity. The sort of studio we work in draws heavily on electricity, and electricity can be unpredictable. Particular problems can arise around electricity. Piggybacking double adapters or daisy chaining power boards can cause electrical faults and can lead to shocks and fires. These shocks can be fatal, so it's important to take electricity seriously. If you see piggybacked adapters or overloaded power points, tell your trainer immediately. Don't try and fix it yourself, as the master power may need to be shut off to fix the problem. Also, look out for frayed cables or electrical cords, loose wiring or exposed wiring. Again, don't try and fix these problems. Alert your trainer immediately. Even after a piece of electrical equipment, appliance or machine has been disconnected from the power source, it may still partially operate. This is because of stored energy within the equipment. It is always better to be safe if something looks dodgy, so always tell your trainer. Other obstacles. Generally, sharp edges like the corners of tables and edges of doors can cause injury in the studio. Sometimes the low light in the studio can mean that some of these hazards go unseen. Particular care should be given to objects protruding in walkways or covering emergency exits. Instruments, amps, speakers and other equipment can be moved around regularly, and it's really important that they are stowed away from walkways and exits. It's also important that things are stowed away and not balanced on top of each other. Equipment can be very heavy and there's a real risk of crushing injuries if they fall.